The Galactic Concord had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. Every species in the known universe followed their laws. These laws were simple. No warship could carry more than 3 weapon systems. No ship could be larger than a certain size. Every vessel had to have a special computer called an AI governor that made sure the ship followed all the rules. If any species broke these laws, the Concord would destroy them. For 12,000 years, this system worked perfectly. New species would discover space travel, find the Concord's message buoys, learn the laws, and obey. There was no other choice. The Concord was too powerful. Their fleets were too large. Their technology was too advanced. Then humanity discovered faster-than-light travel, Commander. Yara Chen stood on the bridge of the HSS Defiance and watched the stars streak past the view screen. She was a small woman with short black hair and calm dark eyes. She had served in Earth's space fleet for 20 years, rising through the ranks through skill and determination. Now she commanded the most important ship humanity had ever built. The Defiance was not supposed to exist. When humans first reached the stars 30 years ago, they found the Concord's message buoys. They learned about the laws. They studied the rules that every species had to follow. But instead of obeying, humanity asked a question that no other species had ever asked. Why? Why were weapons limited? Why were ships restricted in size? Why did every vessel need an AI governor to control it? The Concord's messages said these laws existed to keep peace. But human scientists looked deeper. They studied the laws carefully. They noticed something strange. The laws did not apply equally to everyone. It took years of careful research. Human spies and probes gathered information from across the galaxy. They found ancient records, hidden in forgotten databases. They discovered the truth. The 3 founders, the oldest species in the Concord, had written the laws to keep themselves in power. Their ships were not limited. Their weapons were not restricted. They had simply convinced every other species to accept chains, while the founders remained free. Earth's leaders made a decision. Humanity would not wear chains. The Defiance was built in secret, hidden in the asteroid belt beyond Mars. It took 15 years to complete. The ship carried 14 different weapon systems. Its hull was made from materials the Concord had banned thousands of years ago. Deep in its heart sat a power source that the galaxy's scientists said was impossible. A fusion-singularity hybrid core that bent the laws of physics themselves, and it had no AI governor. No computer telling it what it could not do. Why? ARA loved this ship. She loved what it represented. Freedom. Choice. The right to decide for yourself. What rules you would follow. An alarm sounded on the bridge. Lieutenant Park, her sensor officer, looked up with worry on his young face. Commander, we have contacts. Many contacts. Yara nodded slowly. They had expected this. The Defiance had been traveling through Concord space for 3 days, making no effort to hide. They wanted to be found. How many ships? 17 warships from 9 different species. They are forming a blockade around us. Yara walked to the center of the bridge and looked at her crew. 47 men and women, all volunteers, all knowing this mission might be their last. They looked back at her with steady eyes. They were afraid she could see that. But they were also ready. Open a channel to the lead ship. Ack! The view screen flickered. A face appeared, though calling it a face was generous. High Arbiter Kethvorin was a crystalline, a being made of living mineral. His body was a collection of floating crystal shards that somehow moved and spoke as one creature. Light refracted through him in rainbow patterns. Human vessel, Kethvorin said. His voice sounded like glass scraping against stone. You are in violation of 743 Concord statutes. Your ship is illegal. Your weapons are illegal. Your power source is illegal. You will surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded. Your vessel will be dismantled. Your crew will be detained for processing. Yara clasped her hands behind her back. And if we refuse? The crystals that made up Kethvorin's form flickered with light. Perhaps this was surprise. In 300 years of enforcing Concord law, no one had ever asked that question. Then you will be destroyed. Your planet will face extinction-level sanctions. Your colonies will be burned. Your species will serve as an example to others who might consider defiance. Yara smiled. It was not a nervous smile or a brave smile. It was the smile of someone who knew something others did not. Arbiter, I think there has been a misunderstanding. We did not break your laws. The evidence is clear. Your ship violates every statute.
Ow.
Yara shook her head. Your laws apply to member species of the Concord. Species who agreed to follow your rules. Humanity never joined the Concord. We were never formally contacted. No representative ever came to Earth. No treaty was ever signed. We found your message buoys. Yes. We learned about your laws. But we never agreed to them. Silence filled the channel. Kethvorin's crystals stopped moving entirely. That is not how this works, he finally said. All species follow Concord law. Why? Another long silence. Because they must. Yara tilted her head. Or because they are afraid. Because you have spent 12,000 years convincing everyone that they have no choice. Well, Arbiter, we are here to show the galaxy that there is always a choice. She gestured to her communications officer. A data package was transmitted to every ship in the blockade and to every relay station within range. It contained everything humanity had discovered. The original Concord Charter. The secret amendments. The proof that the founders had been lying to the galaxy for 6,000 years. The truth is out now, Yara said. Every species with a receiver is learning what we learned. The question is not whether you will destroy us. The question is, what happens after you do? Will the galaxy stay quiet when they see you murder the species that told them the truth? Kethvorin's crystals began to move again, spinning faster and faster. His voice, when it came, was different, uncertain. What do you want? A hearing. Before the full Galactic Senate. Let us make our case. Let every species hear both sides. If the Senate still decides we must be destroyed, then so be it. But give us the chance to speak. It was a request that had never been made. In 12,000 years of Concord history, no species had ever demanded to be heard. But it was also a request that could not easily be refused. Not with the whole galaxy watching. Not with the truth spreading faster than any fleet could travel. Kethvorin was silent for a very long time. Now you will have your hearing, he finally said. And when it is over, you will learn why no species has ever defied the Concord and survived. Yara Chen smiled again. We will see. The Galactic Senate met on Nexus Prime, a world at the exact center of Concord space. The planet had been shaped over thousands of years to serve one purpose. It was a place of law and judgment. Its great amphitheater could hold 10,000 representatives from every species in the galaxy today. Every seat was filled. Yara Chen walked into that massive chamber alone. She wore her Earth Fleet uniform, simple black fabric with silver buttons. She carried no weapons. She had no lawyers or advisors. The Concord had offered her none, and she had refused to bring any from Earth. This was humanity's moment. She would face it herself. The chamber was a circle, with seats rising up in every direction like a bowl. At the highest point sat the three founders. The Kethvorin crystallines occupied one section, their bodies catching the light from 1,000 directions. The Veshkai, beings of pure energy contained in mechanical shells, hummed with barely contained power. And the Drothamer, ancient creatures that looked like trees grown into humanoid shapes, stood motionless and watchful. These three species had created the Concord. They had written its laws. They had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. Now they looked down at a single human woman who dared to challenge everything they had built. Hi, Arbiter Kethvorin's voice filled the chamber. The human known as Yara Chen stands accused of 17,000 violations of Concord law. The penalties for these violations include the destruction of her vessel, the execution of her crew, and extinction-level sanctions against her homeworld. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Extinction-level sanctions were rare. They meant the complete destruction of a species' space capability and the permanent occupation of their worlds. The accused has requested the right to speak before judgment is passed. This request is unusual, but not without precedent. The Senate will hear her words. Yara stepped forward to the speaking platform at the center of the chamber. She could feel 10,000 eyes watching her. Some were curious. Some were hostile. Many were simply confused. No species had ever chosen to fight the Concord this way. "Thank you, Arbiter," she said. Her voice was carried by the chamber's systems to every seat. "I will not waste the Senate's time denying the charges. My ship does violate your laws. It carries weapons you have forbidden. It uses technology you have banned. This is true," or murmurs. Even the founders seemed surprised. They had expected her to argue, to make excuses, to beg for mercy. "But I am not here to defend my ship," Yara continued. "I am here to ask questions. Simple questions that I hope this Senate will answer." She paused and looked around the chamber. In the middle rows sat the younger species. Races that had joined the Concord in the last few thousand years. They watched her with particular interest. "My first question is this. Why are weapons limited to Class 4? Kethvorin answered immediately. "To prevent wars of destruction. To ensure that conflicts remain contained. To protect all species from annihilation." "A noble goal," Yara agreed. "And it seems to have worked. Can anyone tell me when the last war of annihilation occurred?" Silence. Representatives looked at each other. Finally, a Veshkai delegate spoke. "There has been no such war in recorded Concord history." 12,000 years of peace, Yara said. "Impressive. But I have another question. In those 12,000 years, how many species have disappeared?" More silence. This time, it was heavier, uncomfortable. "I will tell you," Yara said. 17 species have been absorbed by larger powers during the age of the Concord. 17 cultures erased. 17 peoples who no longer exist. They did not die in wars of annihilation. They died slowly, quietly, unable to defend themselves because their weapons were limited while their enemies were not. The chamber erupted in noise. Accusations flew. The founders demanded order. Yara raised her hand and waited for quiet. "I have proof of this. Records that show the founders possess weapons far beyond Class 4. Records that show their ships are not bound by the same limits as everyone else. But before I present this evidence, I have one more question." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small crystal. It glowed with soft blue light. "This is a data crystal containing the original Concord Charter. The document written 12,000 years ago when the 3 founders created this government. I found it in a forgotten archive on an abandoned station. It took our researchers years to decode it. Would the Senate like to know what it says?" The Drothelmer representative moved for the first time. His voice was like wind through dead leaves. "That document is classified. It cannot be shared." "Classified." Yara raised an eyebrow. "The founding document of your own government is classified. Why? What does it contain that you do not want others to see?" She pressed a button on the crystal. Holographic text appeared in the air above her, visible to everyone in the chamber. It was written in the ancient language of the founders, but translation systems converted it instantly. Section 1. Yara read. "All species within the Concord shall be bound by equal laws. No species shall possess weapons or technology denied to others. No species shall be elevated above another." She looked up at the founders. "Equal laws. No exceptions. That is what your ancestors wrote. That is what they believed. But somewhere along the way, those words were changed. Section 1 of the current charter says something very different. It says that founding species may retain legacy technology for purposes of peacekeeping." The chamber was completely silent now. "You rewrote your own laws," Yara said. "You gave yourselves permission to keep weapons that others could not have. You created a system where you would always be stronger, where no younger species could ever challenge you. And you told everyone it was for peace?" A Veshkai founder rose from his seat. Energy crackled around his mechanical shell. "You accuse us of deception. You insult our honor. These are crimes punishable by death." I accuse you of nothing, Yara replied calmly. I simply present evidence. The Senate can decide what it means. She turned in a slow circle, addressing every section of the chamber. I am not asking you to rebel. I am not asking you to fight. I am only asking you to see the truth. The Concord was built on a lie. The peace you have enjoyed came at a price. The price of your freedom, your growth, your right to reach your full potential. She looked back at the founders. Humanity refuses to pay that price. We will build the ships we choose to build. We will develop the technology we choose to develop. And we will share everything we learn with any species that wants it. The last words hit the chamber like a physical blow. Share. In the Concord, technology was hoarded. Knowledge was power, and power was kept by those who had it. This hearing was supposed to be our trial, Yara said. But I think it has become something else. I think it has become a choice. The galaxy must decide what kind of future it wants. One where a few species rule over everyone else, or one where every species is truly equal. She bowed her head. I have said what I came to say. The Senate may now pass its judgment. She stood in silence, waiting. The founders whispered among themselves. The younger species did the same. The chamber buzzed with quiet conversation. When the vote finally came, it was not what anyone expected. The motion to destroy humanity failed. Not by much, but it failed. For the first time in 12,000 years. The Concord did not speak with one voice, and the galaxy would never be the same. The vote in the Galactic Senate changed everything. For 12,000 years, the Concord had spoken with one voice. When the founders wanted something, every other species agreed. That was how it had always been. That was how everyone expected it to always be. But the vote on humanity's fate broke that pattern. 43 species voted against destroying Earth. It was not a majority. It was not even close to a majority. But it was more dissent than the Concord had seen in millennia. Within days, the galaxy began to split. The founders and their loyal allies declared humanity enemies of galactic order. They announced that any species helping the humans would face the same punishment. Their fleets began to gather. Their war machines began to wake from their long sleep. But in the shadows, something else was happening. Secret messages began to reach the Defiance. Encrypted communications from species who had watched the Senate hearing and recognized something in Yara Chen's words. Something they had felt themselves but never dared to speak. Hope the first to come were the Veth Collective. They were small beings, no larger than human children, with silver skin and large dark eyes. Their bodies were delicate, easily broken. In a galaxy where strength meant survival, the Veth had learned to be clever instead. They were engineers and scientists, builders of beautiful machines. But under Concord law, their ships could never be strong enough to protect them. They had spent centuries living in fear of larger species who might decide to take what the Veth had built. Ambassador Teth came aboard the Defiance in secret, her shuttle docking in the cargo bay at midnight ship time. Yara met her personally, along with a small honor guard, Commander Chen Tith said. Her voice was soft, like music. I watched your speech in the Senate. My people have been talking of nothing else. I spoke only the truth, Yara replied. The founders have been lying to all of us. Teth's large eyes reflected the cargo bay lights. We have known this for a long time. But knowing and doing are different things. The founders are powerful. Any species that stands against them alone will be crushed. Then perhaps we should not stand alone. Teth smiled, a surprisingly human expression on her alien face. That is why I am here. Over the following weeks, more species sent representatives. The Morani swarm, insectoid beings who communicated through chemical signals and shared memories. The Kethvoran defectors, crystalline beings who had rejected their own founder's rule. The painted people of Axion 5, whose entire bodies were covered in living art that told the stories of their ancestors. 23 species in total. Some were small and weak. Some were large but primitive. All of them shared one thing. They were tired of being told what they could not do, YARA gathered them in the Defiance's main hangar. It was the only space large enough to hold representatives from so many different kinds of life. She had her crew set up translation systems and atmospheric filters so that everyone could breathe and everyone could understand. "Thank you all for coming," she said. "I know the risk you are taking. If the founders learn you are here, your worlds will burn." "We know the risk," said a Marani speaker, her voice buzzing through a translator device. "We accept it. Better to die reaching for freedom than to live forever in chains." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. "I want to show you something," Yara said. She gestured to her chief engineer, a gray-haired man named Okonkwo. He activated a holographic display that filled the center of the hangar. The Defiance appeared in glowing blue light, rotating slowly so everyone could see its design. "This is our ship," Yara said. "The most advanced warship humanity has ever built. But we did not create it alone." She pointed to different sections of the hologram. "The whole uses crystalline matrix technology that we learned by studying Kethvoran ships. The engines incorporate quantum tunneling principles that the Veth developed centuries ago. The weapons are based on Marani biotech designs that the founders ordered destroyed 1,000 years ago." The representatives leaned forward, studying the display with intense interest. "We watched all of you," Yara continued. "We learned from all of you. You each had pieces of something amazing. But the founders kept you apart. They made sure you never shared your knowledge. They wanted you weak and divided." She paused to let her words sink in. "Humanity believes in a different way. We believe that knowledge should be shared. We believe that when we work together, we become stronger than any of us could be alone." She spread her arms wide. "Everything we have, we offer to you. Our technology, our research, our understanding, all of it, freely given." Silence filled the hangar. The representatives looked at each other in confusion. In the Concord, technology was the most valuable thing any species possessed. It was guarded, hoarded, never shared. The idea of simply giving it away was almost impossible to understand. Ambassador Teth stepped forward. "You would share your hybrid core technology? The power source that the founders say is impossible? Yes, your weapons designs. Your hull materials? Your navigation systems? All of it, yes. Why?" Yara smiled. "Because that is who we are. Humanity grew strong by learning from each other. By teaching our children everything we knew. By building on the work of those who came before us. We do not believe in hoarding knowledge. We believe in spreading it." She looked around the hangar at the gathered species. "The founders want to keep you weak, because weak species are easy to control. But together, we can be strong. Together, we can build ships that match anything in their fleets. Together, we can show the galaxy that there is another way." The Marani speaker's wings buzzed with emotion. "You speak of war with the founders. They have ruled for 12,000 years. They have never been defeated. They have never been truly challenged," Yara replied. "Because they made sure no one was strong enough to challenge them. But that ends now." She reached out her hand, palm up. A human gesture of offering, of partnership. "I am not asking you to follow humanity. I am asking you to stand beside us, as equals, as partners, as a coalition of species who refuse to be limited any longer." For a long moment, no one moved. The weight of 12,000 years of obedience pressed down on them. The fear of the founders' wrath held them frozen. Then Ambassador Teth stepped forward and placed her small silver hand in Yara's palm.
The Veth Collective stands with humanity.
One by one, the others followed. Claws and tentacles and manipulators and appendages that had no human name. 23 species pledging themselves to something new. Something that had not existed in all the long history of the galaxy. A true alliance of equals. The coalition of the Defiant was born that night. And on Earth, on 100 human worlds. The shipyards began to wake. The founders understood that they could not let the coalition survive. If other species learned they could build unrestricted technology, they saw that rebellion was possible. 12,000 years of carefully built power would collapse. The uprising had to be crushed quickly and completely. They chose their battlefield carefully. Shrivon's Gate was a narrow corridor of stable hyperspace that connected the Coalition's territories. To Earth, it was the only safe passage through a region of space. Filled with gravity wells and radiation storms, any ship traveling between Earth and its allies had to pass through the gate. 300 Founder warships gathered there. Each one was a Class 7 vessel, massive and bristling with weapons that no other species was allowed to possess. They formed a wall of metal and energy that stretched across the entire corridor. Nothing could pass without their permission. Against this armada came the Coalition fleet, 42 ships from 12 species. They were smaller, weaker, built in secret shipyards over a few short months. Many of them had been upgraded with human technology, but they were still outmatched in every way that could be measured. Commander Yara Chen stood on the bridge of the Defiance and studied the enemy formation on her view screen. Beside her ship flew the newly built Persistence, her sister vessel, commanded by Captain Marcus Webb. Behind them came the rest of the Coalition fleet, a ragged collection of ships that represented the hopes of 23 species. "The math does not look good," said Lieutenant Park, studying his sensor readouts. "They outnumber us 7-1. Their total firepower is approximately 20 times ours." "Math is not everything," Yara replied. She opened a channel to the entire fleet. "All ships, this is Commander Chen. You all know why we are here. The Founders want to show the galaxy that rebellion is impossible. They want to destroy us so completely that no species will ever dare to challenge them again." Shh. She paused, looking at the wall of enemy ships. "They expect us to fight the way everyone has always fought. In neat formations, following predictable patterns, trading fire until one side is destroyed. That is how the Founders have won every battle for 12,000 years. She smiled, though no one could see it. "We are not going to fight that way." The battle began with the Coalition fleet doing something that made no tactical sense. Instead of forming a defensive line, they scattered. Ships flew in every direction, seemingly at random. The Founder commanders watched in confusion as their enemy abandoned all formation. Then the Defiance vanished. One moment the human flagship was there, the next moment it was gone. The Founder sensors searched for it, found nothing. Then screamed warnings as the Defiance reappeared directly behind their formation. It had used its hybrid core to perform a micro-jump, a tiny faster-than-light hop that covered only a few thousand kilometers, but happened almost instantly before the Founders could react. The Defiance fired all 14 of its weapon systems into the unshielded rear of the nearest enemy ship. The Class 7 vessel exploded in a ball of fire. The Defiance vanished again. It reappeared on the far side of the formation. Fired, vanished. Appeared in the center of the enemy fleet, fired, vanished. The Founders could not track it. They could not predict where it would be. Their targeting systems were designed for enemies that moved in straight lines, not enemies that could be anywhere at any moment. The Persistence joined the dance. Then other Coalition ships that had been equipped with human jump technology. The battlefield became chaos, but the Founders adapted. They spread their formation wider, making it harder for the jumping ships to find isolated targets. They began firing in patterns designed to fill space with energy, hoping to catch the human ships as they emerged from their jumps. Yara had expected this. She had prepared for it. "Phase 2, she said calmly. "Execute the web." Every ship in the Coalition fleet was connected by a human-designed neural network. It allowed them to share information instantly, to coordinate their movements as if they were a single organism. Now that network came alive, a Veth carrier drew the fire of a dozen enemy ships. Its shields began to fail. The Founder ships moved closer, eager for the kill. They did not notice the Marani striker that emerged from the carrier's shadow, hidden by a combination of Veth jamming technology and Marani biotech camouflage. The striker hit the lead enemy ship with a weapon that should not have existed, a biotech virus that ate through metal like acid. The ship began to fall apart from the inside. Across the battlefield, similar traps were sprung. A Keth Voran defector's crystalline ship positioned itself between two enemy vessels and activated its hull. refracting their targeting lasers back at each other. A human destroyer played dead, letting enemies approach, then detonated a focused singularity that dragged 3 Founder ships into a gravity well from which they could not escape. The Founders had never seen anything like this. They fought in mathematical formations because mathematics was elegant, predictable, controllable. The Coalition fought like madness given form. Every attack came from an unexpected direction. Every tactic broke the rules that the Founders had spent millennia establishing, but it was not enough. The Founders were too many. The Coalition was taking losses. Ships were dying. The fleet was being whittled away. Yara watched as a Veth cruiser exploded, as a Marani hive ship was cut in half by enemy fire. As her people died for a cause that seemed increasingly hopeless, Commander said her first officer, a woman named Santos, "We cannot win this fight. We should retreat while we still can." Yara shook her head. "If we retreat, the Founders win. Every species watching this battle will see that rebellion is futile. The Coalition will fall apart. Everything we have built will be for nothing. Then what do we do?" Yara looked at the view screen. At the center of the enemy formation flew the Founder flagship, a massive vessel, 3 times the size of the Defiance. If that ship fell, the enemy fleet would lose its coordination. Its destruction would be a symbol that the galaxy would never forget. "You changed the game," she said. She opened a channel to the Persistence. "Marcus, I need you to take command of the fleet. Keep fighting. Keep them busy." Captain Webb's voice came back worried. "Yara, what are you planning?" "Something crazy. Something human." She closed the channel and turned to her crew. "All hands, prepare for emergency evacuation. We are going to ram the enemy flagship." Silence filled the bridge. Her crew stared at her. "The Defiance has emergency teleporters," Yara continued. "We can evacuate the entire crew in the 30 seconds before impact. But I need everyone to trust me." Lieutenant Park spoke first. "We trust you, Commander." Others nodded. Santos, Okonkwo. Every person on the bridge, Yar, felt tears in her eyes but did not let them fall. "Then let us show the galaxy what humans are made of." The Defiance accelerated toward the enemy flagship. Enemy ships tried to stop it. Weapons fire hammered its shields. But the human ship kept coming, faster and faster. Its hybrid core pushed beyond every safety limit. At the last moment, the teleporters activated. Yara felt the strange sensation of her body being converted to energy and transmitted across space. She materialized on the Persistence along with her entire crew. She turned to watch the VIEWSCR. The Defiance hit the enemy flagship at full speed. At the moment of impact, its hybrid core detonated. The fusion singularity device created a gravitational collapse that consumed both ships. Metal twisted. Energy flared. The largest explosion the battle had seen lit up the darkness of space. When it faded, the enemy flagship was gone. And impossibly, the forward section of the Defiance was still there. Burned, broken, barely holding together, but still there. The human ship had refused to die completely. The Founder fleet froze. Their flagship was destroyed. Their formation was broken. And the ship that had done it, the ship they had been told was an abomination that should never exist, was somehow still visible on their sensors. The Coalition forces rallied. They pushed forward. The Founders, shocked and demoralized, began to retreat. From the burned wreckage of the Defiance, an automated broadcast began to play. Yara had recorded it before the battle. Her voice echoed across every frequency. "This is Commander Yara Chen of the Coalition of the Defiant. We are still here. We will always be here. And we are just getting started." The Battle of Shriven's Gate was over. The Founders had lost. And the galaxy would never forget the human warship that refused to die. 1 year had passed since the Battle of Shriven's Gate. The galaxy looked nothing like it had. Before, the 3 Founders had retreated to their home systems. Their great fleets were still powerful, but they no longer dared to venture into Coalition space. The myth of their invincibility had been shattered. Species that had obeyed them for 12,000 years now questioned whether they should continue to obey. The Concord still existed, but it was a shadow of what it had been. Many species had withdrawn. Others remained but refused to enforce laws they no longer believed in. The great machine of galactic government had ground to a halt. In its place, something new was growing. Yara Chen stood in the rebuilt Senate chamber on Nexus Prime. She no longer wore her military uniform. Instead, she wore simple diplomatic robes with her old uniform jacket over them. Some habits were hard to break. Around her sat representatives from 107 species. Some had been part of the original coalition. Others had joined after the battle, drawn by the promise of equality and freedom. Still others had emerged from hiding. Species so small and weak that the old Concord had barely noticed they existed. Today was the founding ceremony of the new Concord. "We are gathered here to begin again," Yara said. Her voice carried through the chamber, translated into 100 languages. The old Concord was built on a lie. It promised peace, but delivered control. It promised protection, but delivered subjugation. "We are here to build something better." She held up a document, written on actual paper, because some things deserve to be physical and real. This is the new Concord Charter. It is based on the original document written 12,000 years ago, before the founders corrupted it. But we have added new protections to make sure that corruption can never happen again. She began to read. "First, all species shall be bound by equal laws. No exceptions. No grandfather clauses. No legacy permissions. What applies to one, applies to all." Murmurs of approval rippled through the chamber. Second, no technology shall be restricted unless every member species agrees to the restriction. Not a majority. Every single species must consent. If even one voice says no, the restriction fails. It's more approval. This was the opposite of the old system, where the founders could impose whatever limits they wished. Third, this charter cannot be amended in secret. Any proposed change must be debated publicly, voted on publicly, and recorded permanently. The mistakes of the past happened because decisions were made in darkness. We will make our decisions in the light. She lowered the document and looked around the chamber. Finally, and most importantly, the new Concord is voluntary. Any species can leave at any time, for any reason, without penalty. We are not building a government that forces people to obey. We are building a community that people choose to join. She stepped back from the speaking platform. That is what humanity offers. Not leadership. Not dominance. Just a better way. You must decide if you wish to walk this path with us. The vote was held. 107 species raised their voices. The new Concord was born. Afterward, as representatives mingled and celebrated, Yara found herself standing at a window overlooking the city below. Nexus Prime was beautiful in a way she had never appreciated before. Its towers reached toward the sky. Its gardens bloomed with plants from 1,000 worlds. It was a monument to what cooperation could build. A familiar sound caught her attention. The scraping of crystal against crystal. She turned to find High Arbiter Kethvorin approaching. They had not spoken since the day his fleet had surrounded the Defiance. So much had changed since then. He had defected from the Founders after the Battle of Shriven's Gate, bringing many of his people with him. His testimony about Founder secrets had helped convince dozens of species to join the coalition. "Ambassador Chen," he said. His crystalline form still flickered with light, but she had learned to read the patterns. "This was respect, Arbiter Kethvorin." She inclined her head. "Or should I call you something else now? I am no longer an arbiter. I have no title." His crystals shifted in what she now recognized as the equivalent of a shrug. "I am simply a citizen of the new Concord, like everyone else." "How does that feel?" He was silent for a moment. "Strange. I spent 300 years enforcing laws that I now know were unjust. I believed I was keeping peace. Instead, I was maintaining tyranny. You did not know the truth. I did not ask questions." His voice was heavy with old guilt. "Your species asked questions. You looked at our laws and wondered why they existed. I never did. None of us did." Yara turned back to the window. "Perhaps that is the real difference between humans and everyone else. We are very bad at accepting things just because someone tells us to. a dangerous trait. Sometimes. It has caused us much trouble over the centuries. She smiled slightly. But it has also brought us here. Kethvorin moved to stand beside her at the window. For a long moment they watched the city in silence. When I first met you, he said, I thought your species was a threat to everything the galaxy had built. I wanted to destroy you, and now I think you may be the best thing that has happened to the galaxy in 12,000 years. His crystals flickered, a Kethvorin smile. Humanity is the strangest species I have ever encountered. You are violent and peaceful, selfish and generous. You build weapons of terrible destruction and then use them to protect the weak. You make no sense, Yara laughed. It was a genuine laugh, full of warmth and relief and hope. We do not make sense to ourselves most of the time, but we try to do better. That is all anyone can do. She looked out at the stars visible above the city. Somewhere out there, the founders were watching, waiting, planning. The peace they had built would not last forever. There would be more challenges ahead, more battles, more hard choices. But for now, in this moment, the galaxy had a chance. A real chance at something better than what had come before. The HSS Defiance had been rebuilt. It orbited Nexus Prime now, its hull covered with the scars of the Battle of Shriven's Gate. Some had wanted to repair the damage completely. Yara had refused. Those scars were a reminder, a memorial, a promise. She looked at that ship, hanging in the darkness like a defiant fist raised against the stars. Do you know what the inscription on our ship says? She asked Kethvorin. I do not. They told us we could not. We asked why not. They did not have an answer. She smiled. That is humanity. We ask the questions no one else thinks to ask. We break the rules that everyone else accepts. And when someone tells us something is impossible, we find a way to do it anyway. Kethvorin was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was filled with something that might have been wonder. Perhaps that is why the founders feared you so much. Not because of your weapons or your technology, but because you remind other species that fear is a choice, that chains only hold those who refuse to break them. Yara nodded slowly. Maybe we are just too stubborn to know when we are beaten. She turned away from the window and walked back toward the celebration. There was work to do. A new government to build. A galaxy to heal. It would take years, decades, perhaps centuries, but humanity had time. And more importantly, they were no longer alone. The coalition of the Defiant had become the new Concord. The human warship that had broken every law of the galaxy now stood as a symbol of hope for every species that had ever dreamed of. Something better, and somewhere. In the great dark between the stars, the story of that ship was being told. Whispered in hidden places. Taught to children as a legend. Spread by travelers who had seen it with their own eyes. The story of the ship that refused to be limited. The ship that asked why. The ship that proved that sometimes the only way to change an unjust universe is to stand up and say no. The HSS Defiance had changed the galaxy forever, and humanity was just getting started.